With the BAMTech deal failing for Riot, it kind of shows that esports isn't on the trajectory in which everyone thought it was going to be. And so, therefore, it kind of hurts esports as a whole ecosystem, not only just Riot or League of Legends. Now, for those of you that don't know, BAMTech was supposed to be this deal with Riot for $300 million for exclusive rights to broadcast all the way through 2023. And Disney, they bought a majority stake within BAMTech in August 2017, which then may have caused a shift of priorities for Disney to say that they want to push the ESPN Plus brand. Now, this new platform, which is a $4.99 subscription service, won't have exclusive rights to stream League of Legends, so everyone will still be able to watch it through things like Twitch and YouTube. Now, this also allows Riot to sell more media rights to other companies, as they would have had to broadcast exclusively on BAMTech for both EU and NA, presumably. So this kind of gives them a little bit more freedom to be able to go to different streaming services to say, hey, would you like to buy media rights so that you can broadcast our tournaments? So potentially Riot is going to be able to make more money off of this, but knowing the track record of Riot, I highly doubt that. Now, this weakens their case to getting a deal with the big streaming platform Twitch, as now Twitch almost has no competition aside from YouTube if Riot wants to try and get a exclusive media deal. Now, the shit thing about this is that there aren't many competitors within the entire streaming platform in the beginning, which is good for driving up prices, since Twitch or YouTube would have decent rivals. So there is a clear problem with a lack of competition within the space, so that Twitch can basically tell you, look, you do it for this amount or we aren't going to do it at all. And there is no bargaining when negotiating with Twitch, because they already know that they're the biggest, and who the hell else are you going to go to? Like, you're going to go to YouTube and get a smaller viewer base, so therefore your sponsorships are going to be dissatisfied with how much viewership you're running? Or do you want to go with us, get big viewership, you'll take a little hit on the actual media exclusive rights agreement, and you can try and make your money up in other ways? Now, there are a couple other tournament organizers which have done exclusive rights. So E-League, they sold their rights to Twitch, which, they have their fighting games on there, and then they have Counter-Strike as well, too. That's one of the big ones. And then Overwatch League, they made a deal with Twitch to stream exclusively for $90 million for 2 years. So that's pretty big chunk of change, $45 million a year. And with exclusivity, you get a stronger bargain, because that platform will have to pay a lot more to compensate for the possible deals you could have gotten from multiple streaming platforms at the same time, for this same event, whatever event that you're running, whether it be IEM or E-League or LCS. Now, Facebook made a deal with ESL to broadcast their tournaments exclusively, and the community was pissed, particularly for Counter-Strike. They were extremely unhappy, and this was at a time, especially given the fiasco with Facebook mining data and privacy issues and everything. So there was a lot of distrust within the community already about Facebook, and now you're shoving this streaming service that it's only going to be on Facebook, and people want Twitch chat. They want the familiarity of the streaming that they've been accustomed to for this entire time, because everything's been streamed on Twitch. So ESL must have made fucking bank off of this deal, because when you look at it in its entirety, the viewership numbers have dropped. And that also means that sponsorship values would drop in turn, because that's the whole point of a sponsorship, is to get as many eyeballs on your brand as possible. So if you're McDonald's, you want as many people as possible to see your brand on those teams and on those players. Well, if viewership has dropped, suddenly it's okay, you guys have this many viewing minutes. That's not enough for me to actually invest within your team or your brand or your league. So therefore, I'm not going to sponsor you. And you make that money up by getting exclusive media rights or broadcasting rights. So ESL must have made a ton of money off of that. And that's also probably an initiative from Facebook so that they can start trying to compete with Twitch and to get within this space. And this is one of the steps for them to do that. So they have to kind of pay out the big bucks because they know that viewership is going to drop. So this is kind of a marketing strategy that they're doing currently in order to have people use their streaming services. Now, everyone is criticizing Riot for lack of sponsorships. And compared to Overwatch League, everyone's comparing Riot's LCS to Overwatch League, and rightly so, because they have Sour Patch Kids, they have Intel, HP, T-Mobile, Toyota, and then a whole bunch of other smaller sponsorships as well too. So it's difficult to argue that Riot has done a good job getting sponsorships. They completely haven't. And it's because Riot was never pressed to get sponsorships in the first place, because their whole advertisement is the LCS, it's the LCK, it's the LPL. These leagues drive players to play the game and then spend money on skins, which, directly give revenue to Riot. So as a publisher, you don't have much incentive to get sponsorships other than to help fund the league itself and to give back to the players and the teams. So essentially, Riot didn't give a shit about that before. And you could see that Riot has slowly adapted, to new pathways of revenue, with allowing crowdfunding of tournaments through skins. And that means that they take a hit from the skins in order to fund this prize pool, right? So that's revenue basically out of their pocket. That's millions of dollars. You look at the recent MSI and how much the Conqueror Varus skin had generated. And so it's direct money out of Riot's pocket, which then they have to fund over towards these players to improve their life and improve the team's life and such within the entire esports ecosystem. So CSGO, for instance, they have long had stickers, which is like, skins for your gun or whatever that you can put on there. And that revenue goes towards the teams and specific players, at least in part, right? So if you're a very popular player, say you're Shroud back in the day, you could have a CSGO skin, which, you just tell people to buy and you get a large chunk of that revenue. And that's an extra way in which you can make money. So it incentivizes teams and tournament organizers and everybody to harp on the whole skin aspect, so that people buy these skins and you get more revenue, and so does Valve as well too, because they take a cut from it. Now, Dota has had the Battle Pass in the Compendium for a long time, which crowdfunds their TI tournament. So that helps them subsidize that tournament so that Valve doesn't actually have to pay out of pocket very much for anything other than the infrastructure of actually creating this Battle Pass or this Compendium. Now, for the whole argument, which I keep on hearing regularly, which is that, Riot getting sponsorships would mean that they would then eventually run into the problem of conflicting sponsors for the teams themselves. Say if Riot was sponsored by Intel, suddenly they would have to say no team can be sponsored by AMD. That's not the case in any traditional sport. I mean, you have the NFL, they were sponsored by Hyundai in 2015, but the Green Bay Packers and Pittsburgh Steelers were sponsored by Chevy. And then Verizon sponsors the NFL currently, but the Dallas Cowboys are sponsored by AT&T. So as you can see, it's not a problem in traditional sports, so it shouldn't be a problem within esports. And if that were the case, then you would have to sell exclusive sponsorship rights for the actual league itself. And that would skyrocket that sponsorship to a huge amount. You would have to say, hey, Verizon, if you want to sponsor us, you're going to have to pay a shit ton of money because some of these other teams are sponsored by T-Mobile. So you have to subsidize that. And usually it just doesn't make any sense because the teams want their own sponsors. They want their own revenue that they don't have to share with other teams. So it's like you would be taking away from the team directly. So most likely, no matter how much you get a deal for the sponsorship of the entire broadcast, it's probably not going to equate to the amount that you would get with a personal sponsorship for your team. So with the new deal that Riot has done with ESPN Plus, which is that subscription, they need to change up their game plan. They need to offer a different experience for the user that uses that ESPN Plus, as the crowd is going to be entirely different. The demographic is going to be way different, most likely non-endemic people who don't really play video games too much. If they tune into League of Legends, they most likely play video games to some capacity, but they may not be League of Legends players themselves, right? So you need to have a noob-friendly stream specifically for this broadcast. So that's going to require different casters and different observers to focus on the micro aspects of the game. Say the different abilities of a specific champion or different matchups within a specific lane, and the cooldowns of each characters and how the champions interact with minions. Very basic shit they're going to have to cover on this channel. And you could even extend that to segments that break down mechanics of the game, as far as like what a global ultimate is, and maybe even break down terminology within those segments as well too. And then you could also have important highlights of key players and personalities within the space so that you're able to give these different storylines that are catered towards this audience. So you could talk about Bjergsen and how he's been on TSM for so long. And then you could talk about Dardoch and his history of jumping from team to team. And there's this mystique about him being toxic, and you can go into all these different popular storylines that some of these fans actually need to know in order to be more invested within the entire league itself. So this is an aspect in which ESPN Plus should focus on, and Riot needs to divest at least some resources in the beginning in order to make this experience different, because otherwise you're just looking for endemic people which can watch on Twitch or YouTube anyways. So there's no point in actually having this service in the beginning if it's just going to be the same service that everyone else can get from these other streaming platforms. So Riot needs to make a conscious decision to make this experience different and most likely noob friendly, and I think that should be a good direction to go. But now they also do need to focus on getting more sponsorships for the entire league itself. And you could see that Riot is somewhat incompetent with getting sponsorship deals itself because of the lack of it. And even at this most recent MSI, they had the State Farm analyst desk. Well, that doesn't actually make sense to have such a small sponsorship deal for a international tournament that has nothing to do with any of these other countries. You can't even get State Farm in some of these countries. So how is that advertisement actually doing anything? All those extra eyeballs on your sponsorship actually isn't doing anything for your brand as State Farm because they can't purchase your insurance regardless. So it doesn't make any sense to sponsor that tournament. So as you can see, Riot hasn't really learned how to do sponsorships, and they haven't learned to gather sponsorships for like these international tournaments to where you do need a global brand such as, you know, Coca-Cola or Intel or McDonald's or whatnot. So Riot needs to work on that, and they also need to focus on getting, you know, at least a media deal with Twitch or with YouTube. Just come crawling back. They're going to offer you something really low. Just take it within the meantime because you already took a hit with BAMTech, and then start creating a product that allows a new injection of players and a new injection of an audience, which I think that's what Riot is trying to do anyways with their ESPN deal in the first place with BAMTech, but now it's come to the smaller deal of ESPN Plus. So they should still try and focus on getting more of a bigger audience, because a bigger audience means that most likely more players means more people to potentially bring revenue to your game with the purchase of skins. So Riot just needs to buckle down and start focusing on actually generating revenue.